Please welcome Mr. Bill Rambo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm good. I'm good. Now, first of all, I want to know, what did they pay the students here to come to this thing tonight? Did you get some free credits or something? You know.
Oh, they heard about you.
They did. Oh,
They made
okay.
up a few stories.
And who was responsible for this?
Derek.
You know, I came up here to snip a ribbon, and that was basically it. All of a sudden, I see this. He says, well, I got to give a talk, and you got to give an interview to the Canton Repository, which really came out very nice, don't you think?
No, you haven't changed. That's about right.
That's about right, yeah. Yeah, so according to Derek, I'm supposed to talk a little bit about my early days at Walsh. I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can, really. Talk a little bit about my job, and maybe give us some advice, you business people, on your career.
Do they have a microphone on you, by the way?
Yes, they do.
Is it on?
I think it's on.
It's being recorded. I don't know. Can you hear? Maybe they can't hear me in the back. For the video? Okay, that means they can't hear me.
No, you can hear. Yeah.
Okay. You know, this thing kind of scared me more than anything else. Master class series, and when I found out I was the first one, what kind of tradition was I going to set in this thing? Jeez, criminy. Like the prom, yeah. But I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not a dynamic speaker. I'm not an inspirational speaker. I gave a lot of talks in my life, but they've all been business talks at conventions, seminars, things like that. And usually those things will put you to sleep. I was in the insurance business for about 36 years, and that'll put you to sleep, probably. Well, right, Mike? Yeah. No, insurance business really is a very exciting business and a very creative business, and the people in the insurance business are pretty good. Now and then I'm going to refer to a card here just to keep me going so I don't get too far off key. When I first came to Walsh, my career, I had no great epiphanies or anything. I had no major tragedies where I had to pick myself up out of the gutter and get going again. It was basically just a career of hard work and facing your obligations and devotion to the companies I worked for, and a lot of self-discipline, I guess you'd say. And of course, the two big companies I worked for 15 years each, I was able to buy into those companies when they were very, very, very small. And this is something I would encourage everybody. If you go into business, for yourself, of course, you own it. Or for somebody else, if you get a chance, but you have to believe in the company. If you believe in it and the people running it, you want to be an integral part of it, buy into it and become a part of it, just like you're a part of the school. And this is something I've always, ever since I graduated, I felt that I had an obligation to this school, and I sincerely mean this. I had an obligation to the school to be as successful as I could. And I'm not talking about success as far as money. Be as successful as I could in what I did in my career. Now, I felt, especially the first Sean and Mike and Dick and Dave, our first class, I think it meant a lot to the school if we became successful. And I think just about everybody that graduated out of that class was successful, pretty successful in what they did. I know Dick was well, Sean's a lawyer, Dick was a principal. Dave, I'm not sure what you did, but I know, yeah, anyhow. You taught, that's right, you did teach here. Well, okay. So anyhow, I came to school here. I was not a very good student in high school. Probably Dick could relate to that. We were good friends back in high school. Talk up? My wife says talk up. I don't know if I can be heard back there or not. But I wasn't a great student. I was a B- student, probably at best. Probably at best I was. And I only met a counselor once in high school. And his advice to me was, don't go to college. So, you know, what was I going to do, you know? I was 17 years old. My choice was wait till I was 18, go to the draft, or go down to Timken Roller Bearing and shovel coal in an open hearth furnace. I was only 150 pounds then, and I wasn't going to, you know, do that very successfully. So I remember one time my father and I were out at Central when Walsh, the brothers first came down here, the 7 brothers. And Brother Robert was giving a talk, talking about Walsh, and sounded good to my dad. So we got home that night, filled out the application. He made sure we filled it out right away too, because he knew he wasn't going to send me anyplace else. And sent it in, and I guess Brother Robert told me a few years later that I was the first registrant applicant to the school. I really never knew that till Brother Robert told me. So does that make me, I was first registered, remember that, the word registered. I was probably not the first person accepted to the school. So there is a difference between a registrant and somebody being accepted. So we did that, and I'm going to refer to my cards a little bit here because I don't want to get too far off key here, or cue. So then I started my career, really started here at Walsh. I felt like it started here at Walsh. My first couple of 2.5 years, actually my grades were pretty good here. I had to show that counselor up. I carried a 3.0 plus or something. The fourth year, they kind of dragged. Got involved in a lot, like with the Spectator, the Lamp. We had some fundraisers because I was running the prom, needed some seed money for that to pay the hotel and Nesta, the band, things like that. So my grades really kind of faltered a lot that year. Here again, I went through high school as just a ambivalent person. I really had no ambition, and when I got here, my ambition started to pick up. And I think that was the influence of the brothers, the 7 brothers, especially Brother Robert. He was very, very good to me and kind of built up my self-esteem a lot. So I felt like I had to do more, and which I did, really. So I started my career right here at Walsh, and so to speak anyways, not really started here. But one thing I wanted to, I think there's how many business students are here? Raise your hand. Okay, great. That's great. How many nursing students are here? That's great too. Wonderful. How many in business know what they're going to do after they graduate? How many don't? The others don't. I know, right? I was that way. 4 years here, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Absolutely none. I just kind of floated along, tried to do the best I could here, which I did. And at one time, I was a history major. I thought I'd probably be a history teacher. And then I started thinking about this. I went through high school, and I wasn't the greatest student, kind of a smart aleck. I said, could I put up with smart alecks like myself, as a teacher? And I said, no. So that's when I kind of changed my mind, decided, maybe business or just a job would be something better. But I looked up what a career was, just a definition real quick. And it's defined as a job or profession that someone does for a long time, a field of pursuit of progressive, consecutive something, achievement, that's it. I don't have my glasses on. Consecutive achievement, especially in business, public, or professional life, for which one undertakes as a permanent calling. Sometimes it takes a while to find that permanent calling. I know it took me about 3 or 4 tries to find that permanent calling, but I finally did. So those of you that don't know what you want to do, don't worry about it. Take a little risk, find something. If you got to find something else, look for something. Don't quit your job, though, to find another job. That's the worst thing you can do. So, but as I say, I was a B student at Central, 17 years old, but started to find myself here. So what did I do here at Walsh? First thing, I think it was the end of our sophomore year. Well, I don't know, Dick and Mike, but a fellow named Gallagher and myself, I played golf with him. And we had some pretty good sticks on the team, really. I was a single digit. Gallagher was, and so does a fellow named Larry Hug. He was our first man. Dick Gahn played for us, Michael Bryan played for us. And I went to Brother Robert and, said, we got some guys here that can play some golf. I think we can put together a pretty decent golf team and go forward with this thing. And then Brother Robert agreed, and with his help and his support, he hired a coach. I don't know if the coach knew anything about golf, as I recall, but he's still the coach, and we didn't have to. I mean, we had some pretty good sticks there at that time. I don't think he did he? I don't think he knew anything about it. Did he?
Mike Klaus was a good golfer, but he was more of a pool hustler. He was a stockbroker here in town.
Oh, is that right?
He was the first guy.
Yeah, he was a nice guy. I remember that.
He came after that.
Okay, okay. But we had, you know, I looked back a couple of years ago, I was looking through some old stuff, and I found an article out of the Canton Repository, and it talked about our golf team. And that very first year, we were an 8-1. 8 wins, not 8 losses, 8-1 record. I thought that was a pretty good record for an upstarting, new start golf team. So that was something I was proud of, and still am proud of today that we did start that golf team. And I understand you guys do a pretty good job still. You got the winning team, Coach?
Very good.
Yeah, great, great, fantastic. That makes me proud, something we started. So I kind of go on to my senior year, and my campaign manager, Dave Mono here, talked me into running for class treasurer, first class treasurer of the senior class. He had signs up, he made signs up all over that building over. We only had 2 buildings back there, remember. He had signs up in that building, you couldn't see anything else there. Rambo for treasurer or something. He had one picture of a ram and another of a bow and Rambo. You know, very clever, Dave, very clever. So anyhow, I won that. I won that.
Right.
Yeah, if you need a campaign manager, it's Mono here. Don't look for it now, it's too late. But my real success, the golf team was a success, that was a success. And we never had a prom here, so you know, we started talking about it with the class officers. We need a junior senior prom. So somehow I got elected to do it. I may have volunteered. I was looking to really do more and get involved in things. This was kind of my coming out, really, was my junior, senior year. And thanks to Brother Robert, I think he had a lot to do with that too. But I got involved with the prom, and there was a lot of work. And it cost me a lot of time in my studies. And before the prom itself, we actually had, I remember we had some fundraisers. I can't remember what we raffled off, but we raffled off something. But in those days, you didn't need a lot of seed money. You know, $100 down at the Nesta and $100 for a band or something was enough to get started anyways. And the prom was a real success. It even surprised me. One of the president of the class, Pete Rogers at the time, wrote a nice article about the prom and how successful it was and this and that. So, but that time cost me my 3.0 average, 3.0 plus. Tell you what else cost me. I took a metaphysics class. Sean, you remember that? Jeez. Why did I ever get involved in metaphysics? I don't know.
You were a pal of Brother Robert.
Yeah, but he didn't teach it. I thought he'd teach it. He had nothing against the Germans. I couldn't understand one word that guy said the entire semester. Jeez. I should have dropped. Yeah, I should have dropped the course, but I didn't. I was bullheaded. I didn't drop the darn course. But anyhow, that hurt me a little bit with the grade point average. I think I ended up with 2.99999 or something like that. So anyhow, so school's over. That's kind of started my career. And guess what? Now I need to go in the service. Back in those, most of you fellows don't know, or fortunately you don't have to. The draft back then, Vietnam was just starting to heat up. I was supposed to go to Officers Candidate School with the Marines. And actually, this was in the middle of my senior year too. I'd signed up with the Marine Corps. And I got a hernia later on, towards the end of my year, and had to have that taken care of. And the Marines kind of said, well, look, we can't take you right now. We got to wait a year. Well, what do? You don't have the military out of the way. You got to do something. You know, you can't find a job or anything back then. So I joined the Ohio National Guard, did my 6 months active duty with the National Guard, and came back and found a headhunter. And jobs weren't that easy to find back then either. They were somewhat difficult. Found a headhunter, and he found me a job up in Cleveland as an insurance adjuster. And I spent 2 years with one company up there as an insurance adjuster, and 2 years with a second company. The reason I left the first company for the second company was because the second company gave me a brand new Chevrolet Impala. I thought that was pretty cool, you know, drive around in a brand new Chevrolet Impala. So, and of course I was married and just started a family at that time too. The Chevrolet Impala was something my wife and I laugh about today, because before that we drove you guys wouldn't remember, what was it, a Ford Comet. This was a two-door, ugliest little car you'd ever want to drive. It was yellower than a banana. I was embarrassed every time we drove down the street in this thing, because I was like 21, 22 years old. I thought it was still cool. I didn't want to be seen in this yellow banana. But anyhow, so 4 years as an insurance adjuster, and I hated it. Not to say that being an insurance adjuster is a great job, a very noble job, but it was a little too pugilistic for me. I had to deal with attorneys. And actually, that was really so that was one of the best lessons of my life. 4 years dealing with attorneys on, fall downs and accidents and that type of thing. If you ever want to get a good education, that's a way to start. So 4 years there, I ended up, I think it was through an industry publication, finding a company out of Grand Rapids, Michigan that was looking for a marketing person. That's more or less what I wanted to get into, was marketing. And I went up, interviewed with them. This fellow was about a year older than me. He was running the office. I don't think he wanted to hire anybody older. Probably he didn't feel right about that, maybe managing somebody older. But so I took that job in marketing. It was with a company called Atlantic Mutual. And I explained what the end of the business I was in was called property casualty insurance. And the companies I had always been with were companies that operated through independent insurance agents. Independent insurance agents represent several companies. And your job was to go in there and wrestle with the Aetna or the Hartford and these people to get business out of those agencies. It was a great job. I loved it, really did. They moved my boss to Chicago. There was talk of moving the office to Detroit. Here I got a beautiful young wife, a couple of small children, one on the way, and I wasn't going to move to Detroit, Michigan. So I started looking for a job, and word must have gotten out, but a friend of mine called me that I had worked with at one of the companies as an adjuster, and told me that a company called Cincinnati Insurance Company was looking for somebody to open up the state of Michigan, a western side of the state of Michigan. They just found somebody on the eastern side. And I knew this fella, he was a good guy. If he told me the company was a great company with a lot of values, family values, other values, it was a good company. So I went down to Cincinnati, interviewed with them. Immediately I loved them. The general manager, I just loved him from the beginning. Loved all the heads of departments down there. It was like they were a team, just kind of oxen team pulling in the same direction, which was really great. So I took the job there, opened up the state of Michigan, western side of the state of Michigan. And with the products they had, it was no problem to be successful. Now, one reason nobody else wanted the job, and they interviewed other people in Michigan, was because it was a small, new company. They had to start the territory. A lot of people just didn't want to get into that situation, and to me, it was just a great opportunity. Cincinnati Insurance offered stock options and stock loan, interest-free loan plans. My wife and I took advantage of all of that. You know, we could borrow $2,000. I'd borrow $2,000, buy the stock, run it down to $1,000, borrow another $1,000. Did that for 15 years. So it accumulates after 15 years. And every year the president or the chairman of the company would give you a share of stock for every year you were with the company, which was to all employees. It was a great company. So went from there, from Grand Rapids down to Florida for 4 years. And the reason I went to Florida was because they had fired a guy down there. The company had a lot of losses down there. And my job was to go down and rebuild the state. One reason they had a lot of losses, they were involved in contractor surety bonds, which I'm sure some of you business people understand. And so I went down there and spent 4 years. First of all, I tore it down, and then I rebuilt it. It wasn't hard to do these things. I mean, all you needed was some drive and some focus and dedication and hard work. Pour yourself in that car every day and take off and start calling on people. So did that for 4 years. They asked me to asked my wife and I to come to Cincinnati, which wasn't too sure about that, but I was in 18 hours into a master's class at that time, a graduate class, and there was a professor there that I really liked and listened to, and I asked him, am I better off finishing this master's program, which I really wanted to do, or taking the job in the home office of Cincinnati and taking over this department, which was a major department? And he says, no question, you take the job. You don't forget the master. You can finish that some other time if you want. So I took the job. We went up there, and was taking over a department that the fella that ran it wanted to go into government work, and just didn't pay it. He was good. There was no major problems with the operation. It was good, and all it really needed was some tender love and care, and talk to the people and pay attention to them. So did that for about 3.5 years. We reorganized. Cincinnati reorganized, and I actually started a new company, but it wasn't our new department. It really wasn't any big deal. I just kind of took part of this department, part of this department, part of this one, put them together. And all the departments I was taking parts of, some of it was the people that worked for me, and they were from departments that the managers did a good job. So it was no real problem whatsoever. Spent 3.5 years doing that, and I really think I was growing stale. There was really no place for me to go after that, unless I waited another 5-10 years, to move up to president's spot. Didn't want to wait that long. So a friend of mine from Florida I did business with Brown and Brown. He was executive vice president at the time, and I knew him well. I always did business with him. He was very honest. The company was very honest. And I'm sitting in my office one day looking at snow up to here. He says, "You need to get out of that snow." So I said, "Well, maybe so. What do you got in mind?" He said, "Well, we got a little company down here called McDuff Underwriters. It's an excess and surplus lines broker." And I'll explain that in a minute, what an excess and surplus lines broker is. "We need somebody to come down and run it. It's in real trouble." So I went down and talked to he and Hyatt Brown, who was the chairman of the board. Hyatt had just gotten out of the House of Representatives in Tallahassee. He was actually Speaker of the House, very powerful Democrat. Ooh. But no, I don't want to get into that. He was a good Democrat. He really, really was very good. So very well respected.
We're okay.
Yeah, okay. So talked to them, and I liked the challenge of it. This thing was about, I don't know, 600,000 or something. It wasn't big, and so I took the job, took the challenge. The only problem I had was I was leaving stock with Cincinnati on the table if I left Cincinnati, some options. So I negotiated some stock with Brown and Brown, but it was a privately held company. The only person who was going to buy the stock back was Hyatt Brown, but I trusted him that we would. We had a system of revaluing the stock every year, and so I knew something, if I ever had to sell it, would happen. I'd be able to. So the company really was in bad shape, and it was worse than what they told me. So the problem I had was, another problem I had was, I told my wife that this was the last move we were going to make. So if I didn't make this happen, I don't know what the hell I was going to do out there. But we made it happen, and we stuck it out. We've been there since 1985 now in Florida. The company itself, just the people who worked for it had a bad attitude, and the guy before me died in London, and there was an interim caretaker, and he didn't do a very good job. And when I walked in, I told him, I said, "Look, I want carte blanche on this thing if I'm going to come and do that." And he said, "No problem, you've got it." So was able to build that up. Most of the people that worked there when I started, they left. You just told them what was expected of them, and they kind of slowly just left. I never fired one of them. But I started hiring people with enthusiasm and really wanted to do a good job. Now, I said it's an excess and surplus lines broker. What it is, an excess and surplus lines broker, succinctly, it's an insurance agent for insurance agents. Insurance agents can't find coverage for something, they would come to us, and we would find coverage. With very good companies too, by the way, all A-rated companies, or Lloyd's of London. I did a lot of business over in Lloyd's of London at the time. In fact, they were probably my biggest outlet, Lloyd's of London. It was 15 years, a lot of fun, and it was a very creative end of the business. It was the end of the business. And the reason why it had to be creative, why it was creative, was because there was no rate regulation on anything we charged. There was no regulation on coverages we would take out, deductibles, anything. You basically just created something for the situation. Helmet manufacturer was always a good example, or a doctor that had 6 malpractice claims or something like that. You sit down, go to the underwriter, make a proposal to them. We did most of the proposals ourselves, and either the underwriters bought it or they didn't buy it. So everything went pretty well. I opened up an office down in Boynton Beach partway through it, and bought a company over in St. Petersburg partway through it, and I was also vice president with Brown & Brown and was involved in some of their purchases. 1993, we merged with a company called Poe & Associates, and Poe & Associates was a publicly traded corporation on the New York Stock Exchange. Well, you can imagine what happened to our stock then, my God, like that. Poe & Associates was a sleepy company, and it didn't take long before we mainly took them over. They were twice our size, but we took them over because we were a little more aggressive than what they were. Just, when I say aggressive, I don't mean in a devious way or anything, just worked harder. You know, and that started at the very top of the company. Hyatt Brown himself worked harder. I mean, he was a workaholic. Most of us were. So that gets us to 1993. After that, I got involved in some government things up in Tallahassee, starting a self-regulatory commission, myself and 4 other fellows. Was the second chairman of that thing. Then, again, that goes back to I just enjoyed getting involved in ground floors of things. So about 1998, I started thinking, you know, I'm getting tired of 50-hour weeks and 55-hour weeks, tired of getting on that airplane all the time. And I told my boss, the chairman, I said, I want to retire. He said, no, you don't. He tried to make excuses for me not to retire. I said, yes, I do, Hyatt. I said, the only thing that's keeping me here is I've got a stock deal that expires when I'm 65 years old. I don't want to wait on that. He said, well, you know, you're going to have to wait on it. Well, I kept hounding him and hounding him. I think he thought I really wanted to leave to start another company or start something for somebody else. So we finally agreed on 2/3 of it, but in cash. But cash spends, you know. Not stocks, cash spends too. So he and I worked something out on that. The only thing I had to do was to sign a 5-year non-compete, and that's how he locked me in, which was fine because I really wasn't going to go anywhere anyways. I wanted to retire, enjoy life. My wife and I wanted to travel some and do some different things, new things. We took up scuba diving in 2004 and got about 500 and some dives, which was a lot of fun. So, okay. So we had some success. My wife and I had a lot of success, but I didn't measure the success by really the money we accumulated. We were comfortable, let's put it that way. I really measured success by the 2 companies that I worked for 15 years each, and being at the bottom of these companies. Cincinnati was $30 million when I started with them. Today they're $5 billion. So, you know, these Brown & Brown was about 15 million when I started. Today they're $1.5 billion. That's how I measure success, by what we were able to grow and provide. And I look back and I think of the people that are employed now with those companies, some of them because of me in the areas I was involved with. I think that's success. So anyhow, I had here one last thing. Well, this really isn't the last thing. You know, I get a little irritated today by Washington, like a lot of us old-timers do, and even some of the press. And it just seems like everybody throws mud at corporations and business people. I spent 36 years in business, and I worked a lot with presidents of companies. I was friends with them, chairman of board of different things. You know, most of the people I worked with were very honest people just trying to do the right job. Businesses, if you think about it, are worth more than the politicians. They, you know, businesses innovate. We wouldn't have cell phones. We wouldn't have this if it wasn't for businesses. I mean, businesses contribute. They pay taxes. And the biggest thing they do is they employ people. And people pay taxes, and people give money to charities, and people raise their families, and you know, they take care of themselves. They're not burdens to society. And I think all you people that are going into business, whether you own it or you don't own it and you work for somebody else, find a company you believe in, stick with them, devote yourself, buy into it. I really emphasize that if you can. And be proud of what you do as a businessman. If you're not happy with the company you're with, you don't think they're honest, find something else. But don't quit your job until you find something else. So anyhow, Derek said I need to give some
I'd like you to say a
guidelines.
word or two about why you and Trina are so supportive of the nursing profession.
Okay, I will get to that. My wife went back to school middle age after our kids were out of school and became a nurse at age 50 and a darn good RN. She worked in ICU in Ormond Beach, Florida at a hospital, or cardiac critical care. And finally retired in 2004, I guess it was. My oldest daughter, our oldest daughter, Tracy, went back, was she 49? 48? 48 or something like that, to become an RN. And she loves it. My wife loved it. My oldest daughter loves it.
She went back.
My youngest daughter, I know that. My youngest daughter went back, how old were you, Joel?
I was 37.
37 years old, to become a nurse. And she loves it. And not only do they make pretty good money today, but it's a fact that they're doing good in life. And this is really why I wanted to support, my wife and I wanted to support the nursing school here. We came up here in 2014, did a tour here, went through the nursing facility. I was impressed with it. And I had talked to a step niece of mine who said she was a nurse, some of her friends went here to get their BSN. And she says it's really a good school, really good school. So we wanted to support something. Plus, I want to leave a legacy with, for my kids. Our middle daughter's a CNA. She supervises in a nursing home. So everybody's kind of been involved, except myself, in, healthcare business. So Derek said I had to give some guidelines, I guess. I don't know. Where's Derek? He'd get me in all this trouble here.
He needs guidance.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down about 9 things here. Probably too many. But I can go over them real quick. First thing I think you need in business, or nursing, or anything. Well, nursing, you need a lot of compassion, too. That's probably number 1. But in business, be enthusiastic. It runs up and down the scale. People that work for you, it rubs off on them. People above you, it rubs off on them. Be enthusiastic. I used to go in and had to lie to myself some days. I'm enthusiastic. Okay, let's go. Okay, you're enthusiastic. Keep learning. And it doesn't always have to be formal learning. I got my CPCU in 1976 after 5 years of study. And that's when it was 5-year, once a year exam. 4 hours, I think, Mike. I'm not sure. Got 18 hours work into my master's program. But it doesn't always have to be formal. Most businesses and industries have some kind of formal education programs, continuing education programs. Read the Wall Street Journal, Investors Business Daily, things like that. You learn a lot. Definitely learn a lot. I did mention have some skin in the game. If you can buy into the company, best thing to do. But make sure it's a company that you feel good about and you fit in. If you're in a position to hire employees, make sure you hire employees as good or better than yourself. They make you look good. Treat your employees are your most valuable asset, don't treat them like robots. Treat them like human beings. I think we're getting too much involved today in treating employees like robots, filling out a computer thing. I've been here, I've been there. They put something on you and they follow you around. I just couldn't have never worked under those conditions. Expect excellence, but not perfection. Here's a big thing. Learn personal communication. Cell phones are great. I love them. We do a lot on our cell phones. But there's nothing like looking somebody in the eye to eye and dealing with them and putting something together. You're putting a deal together, a sale together. Look them eye to eye. You see their body language, you see their expressions, you hear their expressions. How are they saying something? Smartphones are great, and I think they're great for like bullet points and stuff like that and facts, but make sure you learn good personal communication skills. I think that's what maybe we'd be lacking in the future. Don't you, Richard? Yeah. You don't have to agree with me.
True.
Okay. Well, I think it's true anyways. Live up to your obligations. I felt I tried to live up to my obligations, and the obligations of this school, obligations of my wife, my kids, and my grandkids, to the companies I work for. I had an obligation. They were paying me. My father once told me, he says, give 10 hours of work for every 8 hours of pay you make. Well, I've kind of always followed that in my life. That's the only thing my father ever said to me. Gotta get the heck out of here. No, he was a good guy. Pray at times. Don't forget prayer. You know, God does guide you now and then. Don't you? I think so. Especially, I tried to now, pray, especially on difficult decisions that affected people, their families. I think, should I fire this person? Should I not fire? Should I give him a second chance? Should I not give him a second chance? And sometimes the answer came, fire him. Sometimes it didn't. So, and last but not least, but give 110%. Here, this was our mantra at Brown & Brown. I'll read it to you. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle awakens. It knows that it must run faster than the fastest cheetah or it will be killed. Every morning in Africa, a cheetah awakens. It knows that it must outrun the slowest gazelle or will starve to death. So it doesn't matter whether you are a cheetah or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, keep running. I thought that was great. And we live by that motto. Most of you may think, boy, I want to be the cheetah. Believe me, you're going to be the gazelle more than you're the cheetah. There are going to be people coming after you. If you own your own company or anybody in business, there's always somebody chasing after you. So, and finally, Derek asked me to talk about values just real quick. I'm not going to draw this out much longer. Values I learned at Walsh. I have not a plaque, but a thing on my wall hanging in my office, and I've had it hanging in my office. And I truly believe this, and I truly believe these are the values that Walsh taught me. This is by Leo Roston. He was a 20th century American humorist and writer. So, quote unquote, Leo says, "I can't believe the purpose of life is to be happy." I don't think he meant not to be happy, but the sole purpose of life. He says, "I think the purpose of life is to be useful, is to be responsible, is to be honorable, to be compassionate. It's above all to matter, to count, to stand for something, to have made a difference, that you have lived it all." And I hope all of you in the end of your life, or when you get to retire, you look back and say, I made a difference. Thank you.